and then we'll go to George and Yocelyn, and then we'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. I mean, it's a pleasure, a privilege being here today. I mean, unlike Anna, it took me like 3 drops of shampoo and no blow drying. and it took me like, 2 hours to get here from Homestead. So. Yeah. But that's a different topic for a different panel, right? But you're right. I mean, for me, in terms of leadership, and she stole my thunder introducing my great administrative assistant, administrative services director, Jasmine. I think it's trust and letting go. That's the hardest thing. When Anna mentioned my first term as president of the City Manager Association, it wasn't a baton. It was, I'm in the front, how do we stay in the front? Now as you get older, how do you help somebody else win the race? So that, I think, is an analogy that is very, very true. Think about what you're going now. It's like dog-eat-dog world, right? I mean, it's instant, So for me, at least, my personal journey started off when I was 17 years old. I was still in 12th grade. Mayor Wallace of Florida City, who's still there, hired me. As an accountant bookkeeper, and I was the only one who knew Spanish, I had to work the front desk. And I was always wondering, like, why, when other department heads go on vacation, they're making a whopping $12 an hour, I have to go there and work and do their work and bank reconciliations at $4. And Mayor, this is not fair. Kid, don't worry, it's going to pay off. Don't worry, it's going to pay off, right? Well, Jasmine's nodding her head because I use the same terms nowadays too. Going on vacation next week, but I think that's the part of that's leadership, and I think also realizing the position that we're in. Sometimes I take it for granted. How we deal with our stress. Mine is humor. The first thing I thought about when I saw so many people.
He doesn't drink; it's just humor.
No, not okay.
5 o'clock somewhere.
Somewhere, right? It's going to be 5 o'clock somewhere. We know. But I mean, the first reaction I saw was like, wow, look at all these folks here. I mean, last time I saw a room like that was, when it's like, fire town manager, or a zoning hearing that we have to deal with. But I think it's very important for us as leaders to make sure that we start grooming the next generation. And as president of the City Manager Association, I'm preaching that all the time. I mean, we're trying to go out to the universities and teach the universities the kind of skills that we need. I mean, another personal story, my executive assistant is the president of the MPA program, Honor Society at FIU. First day of work, prepare a press release, ordinance resolution. I'm like, what do you mean? You're the president? Never got taught that. So how do we bridge that gap? How do you bridge that gap when, I'm sitting there, she's doing more of that than, well, here's a model case study. I'm like, no, there's no model case study, there's a press release. I get it, the deadline's at noon. Yeah, oh, by the way, my mayor spoiled the version. Oh, you better write her quote. So, that's the kind of stuff that we need to deal with in resolutions and budgets. So, but I think it's getting everybody exposed. I mean, Cutler Bay is a unique situation. We are 45,000 residents. And anybody guess how many employees we have?
Full-time or part-time?
Oh, full-time. Full-time, 32. That's it. So we're a contract city. We're a contract city. We're 45,000 residents, 10 square miles. So that's a fast pace. It's fast paced. So my problem is I have to give the situation to my mayor and bosses and council members in bullets. So I have to think in bullets all the time. So sometimes I talk in bullets, and sometimes I think that my management says, what did he mean by that? Oh, I just told you. So something like that is something that I need to work on, but also our commitment to our internship. We have an internship program, an executive internship program, not with college folks, but with my 11th graders at the high school, the local high school, and they're getting exposed. So we're not just telling them, hey, go make a copy of this. No, you're going to develop a newsletter. What do you want on it? I just told you, figure it out. So those are the kind of things that I think is very challenging. I think you're right, Anna, the older you get, you start trying to let go some more and enjoy that vacation time. But when I was town manager, or city manager at North Bayville 26, it was a dog. It's how do I get there? How to get there? I don't care who I run over at this point. So something that you got to reflect on, as we get older and wiser and use less shampoo.
Absolutely.
At least in my case.
Something critical that Ralph said, you got to be as excited with the position that you have today, because that will lead you to the position that you're going to earn tomorrow. And in the opening session, when I talked to you guys about when I first got into municipal government back in 1983, I was 21 years old, and I wanted it tomorrow, but I had very good mentors along the way. And I remember it was the park manager that told me, right now you're in charge of this pool and this locker room, but make it the best that it can be and get here every morning and give it 150%. And that stayed with me throughout my career. From that very first job that I had at Jose Marquis Pool in the city of Miami to the position that I have today as a city manager here. And for those that work here with me and for those that have known me, I bring that passion every single day. And I want everybody on my team to have it. And I drive them crazy because I want to expose them to as much educational opportunities, to invest in them. So when I bug them, it's because I don't want them to miss a thing. Because it wasn't like that for us when we were growing up. We had to wait to have a certain position for someone to invest in us to go to a conference. And here, to me, the more individuals that we can have be part of this and the partnerships that we can have with ASPA, you know, we want to be as inclusive. Remember the multiplying and the addition. So remember, where you're at today is not where you're gonna be tomorrow. But I will tell you something, that your attitude does determine your altitude in life, okay? So to my right here, I have another amazing individual, and I can call these managers my friends as well. But Josie inspired me to get involved in my professional organization. And all of us have been past presidents of our professional organizations. But I remember also what I learned from Josie, that there's going to be moments in our profession that we're going to be knocked off of our horse, where a door is going to close and we either fall apart or actually we become stronger and more humble because of what has happened to us. But I will tell you, Josie, when you drive through Cutler Bay, or when you drive through North Bay Village, or when you drive through Doral, Josie was the first city manager in the city of Doral, and she did an amazing job. And now for the past couple of years, she went back to the city where she was an assistant manager, and she's doing a terrific job for the village of Pinecrest. Humor, we've shared laughs, we've shared tears, because like I said, and Ralph said, it's not easy, and it's never easy, but we've been able to open up to each other and grow from our experiences. So I was concerned because she's about to be due, and last time she had a baby, she had it before the shower. So I'm like, oh my God, Josie, please hold on with the baby. But I'm going to turn it over to the village manager from the village of Pinecrest, Josie Galiano.
Hi everyone, thank you. Yes, I did accept this engagement with the caveat that I might not make it here. But luckily, he's staying put for now. So I assume, we have a packed house. I'm really impressed with the number of people here, and I'd like to think that you don't just come to listen to us talk because you like how we look or whatever, that you're actually interested in the topic because you aspire to more than what you are now. And if that's the assumption I'm making when I'm going to talk to you a little bit about leadership and how you can climb the ladder of success. And just to give you a little background on myself, I started my career really in my early 20s. I became a secretary. I fumbled into the position. I was the secretary of the first city manager of Key Biscayne when they first incorporated. So I was the 7th employee that they hired in Key Biscayne, which provided a really unique situation where I was able to start working in a city that was a brand new city from the ground up. There's nothing that I can tell you more than that provided an opportunity that forever shaped my life and my career choices moving forward, because I was able to really get into the nitty-gritty of being a generalist and learning a little bit about every single department, which is what led me ultimately to becoming a city manager. But what I could tell you as far as how I feel I was able to go from being a secretary making literally $14,500 a year when I first started my career to a city manager making upwards of $200,000 in basically what amounts to a 25-year span, is something that I think is both a natural ability that I have, just because I have a very, outgoing personality, something that's part of me as I am as a person, and then skills that I've learned over time by working under different people. And so the tidbits of, I guess, suggestions I would make for you as you try to climb the ladder of success are the following. Firstly, never turn down assignments. In fact, look for assignments that nobody's giving you. When I was the secretary in Key Biscayne, I would see something come, my boss back then didn't even have a computer on his desk, so I got to see everything that went through the manager's office, and I was the one that was writing the letters and such. So I would see an opportunity for a grant, and it wasn't in my job description, but I'd be like, can I write this grant? And lo and behold, I was bringing in millions of dollars when that wasn't even part of my job description. And one of the things I've noticed in public service, unfortunately, and it happens more so, I think, in the bigger cities than it does in the smaller, newer cities, because I think in newer cities, you have to wear a lot of different hats, and you don't have, civil service the same way that tells you this is what your job is, and, the unions and all that stuff. But I think one of the reasons that I've been successful was that I reached out beyond my job description. And so you have to almost be more than, you have to act what you aspire to be. You cannot, if you're gonna always be a secretary or whatever position you're in, if that's where you pigeonhole yourself. And so if you don't wanna be there, then you need to start thinking outside of that position and start acting outside of that position. And nobody's gonna be upset when you ask for extra work. Nobody's gonna tell you, no, don't do it, So you need to take, especially if you have a boss that really isn't threatened by that, you need to take advantage of that and build your resume that way. I think the other thing I would suggest is that you really take an active role in networking as much as you can. One of the things that I learned over the course of my becoming a manager, and then I went through a period where we were alluding to, and I'm interested in hearing what George has to say, because George has gone through a lot of these things too, and we actually, the interesting thing about this group in particular, but in the managers group in particular, we've become really close, and we are very close because we go through very stressful situations all the time. Your job is always on the line, somebody's always threatening they're gonna fire you, and you have to deal with that emotion constantly up and down. But that actually has solidified us as a group. But one of the things I learned when I was like a manager in transition, that's what they call it.
When we're unemployed.
Out of a job. And you gotta suck it up, and you're calling everybody, you're calling everybody like, do you have anything you could give me work? I just need to be a consultant just to make ends meet, but that's our life, and we make those decisions. But one of the things I learned is that the networking part of doing things really makes a difference. And so if you invest a lot of time and energy in helping other people grow their careers and helping yourself just make those connections, I think you grow. You establish what I call, it's your professional persona. Why are you special? What makes you special? What makes you stand out? Because when you're competing for these leadership positions, it's cutthroat. And especially if you want to be a manager. I don't know how many people here, I'm just curious. Because usually I speak at a session for FCCMA, which is so you want to be a manager.
Yeah.
But how many of you want to be city managers? Anybody here? Okay. So there are a lot of you do it. That's interesting, because let me just tell you first and foremost, it's not easy. It's not what you think it is. And sometimes I sit back, I honestly sit back and say, I wish I was just an assistant manager where I could just do my research and sit in front of a computer and not have to deal with, the drama that comes with it. So just, be prepared that that's what you want and know that that's where you're going. But anyway, passion. Most people that become leaders have A-type personalities. What does that mean? You're overachievers. You're gonna challenge yourself. You don't need somebody to tell you what to do. You're doing it. You don't wait for instructions. You're a doer. So those kinds of qualities is what I think builds a leadership, are their leadership qualities. and it's what really will get you to that next level. If you have that, like I said, some of it is innate and natural, and I think some of it can be learned. But you have to have passion for that goal. And I think if you set a goal, nobody can stop you from attaining that goal except yourself. And time, obviously. But ultimately, there isn't a goal that you can set for yourself that you cannot achieve if you just have the tenacity to stick to it and pursue it. It could take you years, but you will get there. And not giving up, I think, is important. So with that, I'll stop my speech and I'll let George take over and tell you a little bit about himself.
Okay, you're not gonna say anything nice?
No, I'm gonna say great things about you. I saw that Yocelyn was born out of work.
No, you said you're in front. What the hell?
All right, some nice things.
Don't get by it.
We all agreed we'd say nice things, so.
You cannot drive through the city of Miami Beach without seeing the impact that Jorge Gonzalez has made on that city. George was leading a big city when we were still finding our way to becoming managers. And I remember I ran into him once, at a conference. Oh my God, that's Jorge Gonzalez. But you feel like that. You feel like that, and it's like, with that comes a responsibility, because now life happens to us, and it's like, you still gotta stay humble. And I remember meeting George and developing a relationship, and after 10 great years, 12 years in the city of Miami Beach, George is now with the village of Ball Harbor. He's doing a tremendous job there, and he's really committed to the profession. All of us have grown up here in Miami, and it's been a joy working with George through our professional organization. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jorge Gonzalez.
Thank you. That's very nice. That was good, right? All true as well. She's everything Anna has said about this profession and the need to develop relationships. It is absolutely true. And every one of you aspire to be manager. If you aspire to just succeed in this profession, collect mentors, as many as you can. You never know when you're going to need them. You never know when you're going to call on them, but I guarantee you that you will. We call on each other all the time, just for advice, for thoughts, for support, or just hey, let's go have a drink, anything like that. And it's important because you sit in a role that is the top of the pyramid, and it's lonely up there. Not everybody quite understands everything that you're dealing with, because they only get a perspective, but they don't get the whole. And you're dealing with the whole, and sometimes the whole isn't as pretty as it looks like from below. And so you deal with things that sometimes are hard to explain. What you need to do is put your team together in a way that they trust you, and they know that no matter what you're doing, they trust that you're doing the right thing, and you're trying to move the organization forward. And they may not understand it, but they trust that what you're doing is for the right reasons. I brought some, I like to talk about stories and anecdotes and witticisms, and so I dropped my son off at college, which was amazing, just this past semester, and I gave him a piece of advice before I left, which was given to me, and it was, there are three types of people in life. They're the type of people who wake up in the morning and make things happen. They're the type of people who wake up in the morning and let things happen. And then they're the type of people who wake up in the morning and wonder what the hell happened. The leader is the first one. And so with that, if you do want to be a manager, if you do want to succeed in this organization, you need to make things happen. A lot of what you heard was about going beyond your job. That is, no true words can be said. Those are the kinds of things that distinguish you from everyone else. And if you wanna be that one person, then you need to distinguish yourself. You need to show something extra, something different, something unique that others perhaps aren't showing or can't do. Because those are the ones that are called on to do this kind of stuff. You also have to be lucky. I can assure you that I have been lucky. I started in Miami-Dade County in 1990. I was a management trainee, I was an intern, I was doing whatever it is you got assigned to do. But I always wore a suit and a tie. I don't have to do that anymore, but I always went to the council meeting, or the commission meeting, even if I didn't have to. I was always seen at the places that you should be seen if you were someone at the higher levels, because that's what I aspired to do. And I think I heard Yossi mention, act the role that you aspire to be, and that's true. But luck also plays into it. A lot of you probably were around in the 90s, but anybody remember Hurricane Andrew? Okay, well, I happened to be an intern. And before you know it, from one day to the next, on October 25th, because the 24th was our 25th, I became the manager's right hand on Hurricane Andrew issues, myself and others. How lucky can you be? And Hurricane devastated a lot of South Florida, but it also brought a lot of good to South Florida, a lot of rebuilding, a lot of unity, a lot of things that came from it. And I'll tell you the story that one time on a Sunday morning, I was called, because I was probably the last person available, to go meet with a general and a FEMA director and I don't know how many other people over at the airport, because the federal government was finally coming in. And they sent me because they probably could afford to not have me at the office. I went, I sat quietly for a while. One thing I can't do is stay quiet. And so eventually it came to me and we started talking about transportation and the need to get people to move around in South Dade. And by the time that Sunday meeting ended, I called back and said, we've got like a $400 million grant for some kind of transportation work, South Dade. And he said, how'd you do that? And I said, well, we asked. Needless to say, when I got back, I was kind of a hero. But it was one of those things where I was lucky enough to be the only person they felt they could afford to let go, and you make the most of the opportunity that are given to you. Never say no to yourself. Never say no. If they send you there and you say, well, maybe I'm not the right person, or maybe I'm not qualified, never say no. I was 33 years old. I had never applied for a city manager job. I was happy in Virginia, and someone called me and said, there's an opening in the city of Miami Beach to be city manager. I could have said, listen, I'm not ready. I think I ought to be something else for a while. I've only been doing this a short time. But I submitted my resume. I thought it was just a learning experience to kind of know how it goes. By the end of the week, I was the manager. And, you kind of say, oh shit, now what? Sometimes that's it. I didn't think they would do this. But, I was the youngest and longest serving city manager in Miami Beach, and I'm very proud of that tenure. There's some folks here from Miami Beach who we have shared lots of long history and lots of fun times together. But we're also talking about leaders, and I do want to talk about some key characteristics of a leader. And you can't do this without vision. You really do need to be out there setting that tone and setting that vision, and doing the things that others think can't be done, to taking leaps, not steps, living in tomorrow, not today. But there's three adjectives that I would say a leader needs to have, and it's courage, confidence, and conviction. You will do things that people don't quite understand, and you need to have the courage to say, no, follow me, I know where I'm going, this is the right thing to do. You need to have the courage that sometimes it's unpopular and it might put you in jeopardy. And you need to have the conviction to stick through it and see through it, even in spite of all of the things that might be put in your way. I like to say, leaders lead, managers manage. If you want to be a leader, you've got to have that passion. The words even want you to have that passion. You just manage, you're okay, you do it, but you lead people. that's something that comes from the heart, and that's something that you've heard here today as well. I'm gonna read a quote. I like to read quotes sometimes from famous people. John Quincy Adams. If your actions inspire others to dream more, to learn more, to do more, and to become more, then you're a leader. So that, I think, encapsulates what we've been talking about up here. I think we're better off answering questions than trying to pontificate, although we can. But I think it's better to hear some questions.
Yeah, we like to hear ourselves talk, that's another characteristic of these managers, but, we're curious to hear what you wanna know about us, and I think sky's the limit, you're welcome to ask.
At what point in your career did you know you wanted to be a city manager?
Day one. Day one. As a management trainee, I was interviewed by a couple of assistant county managers, which were a big deal at the county. And I'll never forget it, because I still made him a mentor and made him a friend, and he's been a friend for years and years. But he asked me, where do you see yourselves in 5 years? Or where do you see yourself in 5 years? And maybe it was the audacity of youth that you didn't know any better, but the only thing that came out without a whole lot of thought was assistant county manager sounds like a good place to start. And he helped me all along the way. He laughed, and he helped me along the way. And my fortune, 5 years later, I was an assistant county manager in Arlington County, Virginia, where he helped me get that job. And I told him, Tony, 4 years and like 9 months, but who's counting? And so another mentor began. But yeah, if it's in your heart, you know it right away.
I knew after, like I said, I stumbled on being a secretary. It wasn't like I hadn't aspired even to work in municipal government. I stumbled on that job, because I had actually aspired to work for the UN, OAS, or something in the legislature, because I really enjoyed the law. But when I had ran a campaign for a gentleman who later became U.S. Attorney, Kendall Coffey, and when he lost his bid, I was jobless, and somebody who I had met through the campaign said, hey, there's this secretarial position. I got into it, and I'm like, well, what is this? I didn't even know what public administration was, because my minor is in, or my bachelor's is in political science. So I got into public administration, and just my experience in working for Sam Kissinger, the first manager of Key Biscayne. Of course, once you get bitten by the public administration bug, which I'm sure you're all bitten by this, you see the value in service. And I've always been somebody, and that's why I said natural kind of tendency of, I hate to be second best to anything. I'm one of those personalities, I'm very competitive to begin with by nature. And so, like number 2 is okay, but it was never my aspiration. I just had this feeling that I needed to be number 1. And even when you get smacked down and you fall, and you're jobless and stumbling around for I think it was like 7 years between the time I left Doral and then had a litany of jobs that I stumbled through just to keep paying bills until I was able to get back into the management position. But I was never questioning the fact that that's what I wanted to be again, even though I've been slapped down and stomped on for a while. So it has to be something you really, really want, because otherwise I could tell you, you just won't get there. It's very competitive, and it's hard to get to that position of a city manager, specifically city manager position. On other positions, like I said, you only hold yourself back. It's all up to you what you want.
For me, and I'm going to elaborate on something that George said, I was 34 years old, and I got a call from my cousin who was working at the Herald, and he said, Cousin Anna, they called from the city of South Miami, and they're going to place an ad on Sunday for Director of Parks and Recreation. He was a younger cousin, so he thought, oh my God, you would be perfect for that. I had only been a reg leader for the city of Miami Beach, so I wasn't going to be the most qualified or the most educated for that position, but I felt that I could do it. And I remember at that time you would fill out an application, I remember the application with a pen. Blue ink. And I remember the application asked questions like familiarity with windows. And, okay, I've opened a window. I didn't know anything about computers or anything such. But I seized that opportunity because I knew that if I felt it in my heart, that feeling had to be put in there by God, or something within me was telling me that I should go for it. So I became a department director in South Miami when I was 34, and 3 months into my tenure, the manager that hired me was fired. So there's this new guy coming in, Charles Earl. I'm like, Charles Earl, who is this person? He was at an earlier panel. He still remains a mentor and a great friend. And 3 years into working together, 37 years old, he said to me, you know, your next step, you're gonna be an ACM, but you're gonna make a great city manager one day. So he put that within me. And sometimes it comes from within you, or sometimes somebody sees greatness in you. I see greatness every day in a lot of my teammates, a lot of my employees here, and I probably see more in them than they do in themselves. But it was my mentor and my manager back in South Miami, in my mid-30s, who told me and put that. So it always stayed with me, and I actually became a manager when one door was closing and a better one opened for me. And then I remember when I became a manager, it was tough and challenging, and I thought I was gonna be fired, and I called Yocelyn and I said, Yocelyn, you have that opening for that position, I wanna apply. You know what she told me? She said, Susanna, you're a manager, you cannot be an assistant, you cannot go back.
He had that conversation with me.
And sometimes it happens. You have to go back too? You wanted to go back?
And he said, don't.
You see? So he said no,
It goes
you
all
said
around.
no?
Yeah.
Sometimes you gotta say no.
You gotta hold yourself firm, because that's what you prop yourselves up, because sometimes, but you're human.
Oh, yeah, we are human.
And I think for me it was, as George mentioned, Hurricane Andrew. I'm sitting there at 26 years old, in the finance department, in Hurricane Andrew hits. And my mentor used to be the city manager of Dick Anderson in Fort Lauderdale in the mid-80s. He said, I'm gonna promote you to assistant town manager. What the hell does that mean? What's that mean? I mean, do I do your faxes, or what's that mean? The next thing I know, we're flying every night, to the disaster field office, DFO, the old Eastern building, and you're right, George. I mean, you're sitting there with 4-star generals and everything else, and you're sitting there, and that's where I saw where I wanted to be a manager, because we had to call in psychologists for department heads. We had employees that sent my check to Ocala. Where's that in the book, in your operations manual? So in my office, you see a travel trailer wrapped around a poinciana tree. The day's not like that, it doesn't matter. So you gotta learn how to deal with that chaos. And in my mind, every day when the phone rings, when you have a counselor, you have a minute? Of course not, So that's the chaos for me. That's the chaos, so we have to operate in that chaos. So that's why I'm always thinking that way. So again, it was just that one break, you're right, Joy, that you needed, and you need to step into it. And then the rest, I guess, we say is history, so.
Thank you. Okay, more questions?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for coming. I really appreciate everything you all said. Josie, hi. What is the hardest thing as a manager that you've had to do? In 30 seconds or less? No.
In 30 seconds, let me see.
For me, it's bite my tongue.
Without mentioning names, fire the mayor's brother-in-law.
There you go.
30 seconds.
That's it.
Walk away from a job,
Right.
knowing that when you need to walk away.
Similar, making a decision that costs you your job, and you just say, that's the right decision. And then you get promoted to MIT.
Yeah, there you go. They might see.
My two favorite managers in the whole world, George and Anna.
Oh, we
I
love
don't know
them.
the other two. George, I think I know the answer, but I think that it would be good for you to share with your colleagues here what was the secret for surviving 11 years in the city of Miami Beach with the characters that you and I had to work with. How did you make that happen? And what advice would you give to people here in dealing with the elected officials, especially when there's a lot of conflict within the commission?
I'm not sure I have the right answer. Jose was Miami Beach commissioner when I was hired. He called me Dan Marino at the time. And he's one of the guys that I thought, you're crazy, man. You're going to let a 33-year-old run this place and give him the keys to the Ferrari. And I thank him every day, and he's, again, a great friend. And I think maybe that's the answer, is you know, you treat everybody well, treat everybody equally. You do your job, even if it's unpopular. You keep that line between, especially in the form of government, it's important for you as a manager to keep that line between what is political and what is administrative. Give the best professional recommendation you can give. Don't try to predict what they want you to say. You give your recommendation. You don't get fired for giving the wrong recommendation. They can choose to ignore you, and that's quite all right. As long as they trust that you're giving the recommendation you believe to be right, and then they trust that, notwithstanding that, if they tell you go left, you're going to go left and do the best job you can going left, even though you wanted to go right. And if you do that, you treat everybody fairly and equally, and don't play favorites. Stay out of politics. There was a commissioner who shall remain nameless, who was a bit crazy. Sometimes he'd come up with pearls of wisdom, and one time, and he struggled with this whole form of government thing, and you know how all of a sudden he got elected, yet he wasn't as powerful as he thought he was going to be. And he finally came to my office one time and said, you know, I figured it out. You know, as a manager, in Miami Beach anyway, you have 7 wives. And you need to keep them all happy, and you can't do that all at the same time. I said, you got it. You got it. And, you know, as long as you can keep 4 of them happy. But, you know, no matter how good you are. No, but no, and I, you know, there's 2 people in this room actually. John West still here? John, indulge me 30 seconds in a story, because John West is the head of the political science department at the University of Miami. And, I want to go back and say luck and timing. I was a graduate of the University of Miami, trying to figure out what I was going to do, thinking I was going to law school over the summer. While I was finishing a few classes that I hadn't finished, I had done the graduation ceremony but needed to go to class and finish. And a friend of mine told me about this honor society that the political science department would give. And I wasn't given that honor, even though I had the grades to get it. So I decided, you know, I'm going to drop in to the political science department on a summer day and talk to Dr. West, whom I had never met before, and ask him for this honor society. I was lucky enough to be there, and I was lucky enough that he was there, and I was lucky enough that he had the grace to see me and spend some time with me. And about 3 hours later, I walked out of that office, not going to law school, but going to get my master's in public administration with a graduate assistantship which he had just offered me. Which, if he hadn't done that, or if I had skipped it, or if I had played golf that day, who knows where I'd be. So, John, I don't know if you knew that story, but thank you You're welcome. Say, of course you did. You never know how it happens. And he's still Dr. West.
Questions over there?
My question is to you, and you say you're a student in UN, like studying in master MPA program. So could you share your story in when you are a grad student? And maybe you can give us some recommendation, because I'm also a grad student in UN, and this is my first semester. So yeah, how do you?
Stay away from the rats, guys.
Oh, George.
They just did it brand new.
You know, I think unfortunately in life you learn a lot of what this job requires after you get your MPA. What your MPA does is give you the core basics that you're gonna need. You know, soak it all in. Take everything that's offered. The internship is very important. The internship that you're required to do, I guess you're still required to do at the end of the 2 years, is very important, because that's when you really start to make those relationships and those friends. Attending these events, Dr. West used to, I don't know if he still does, but used to force us to go to these again. Maybe that's why you're here, but these kinds of things, it's not just what you learn in the classroom, but it's the people you meet in the classroom and the guest lecturers and the people you meet in events like this. Different professors come that work in the field. I teach at the university, a local government management class. Maybe we should make it a graduate course. I don't know. But it's a lot of fun, and I really enjoy it. I go give back. I like to spend time at the university, but enjoy your time there, but meet as many people as you can, because they're the ones that are going to help you get a job.
So this question's for Ms. Garcia. I heard you say you have greatness within you. That's actually something I've heard from Les Brown. For each of the panel members, what inspired you, or what book you think made a big difference or impacted you? Something that could motivate us for the future.
Well, Maxwell is one of my favorite authors on leadership, and as a matter of fact, all of you guys are going to be getting this on my dime, not on the taxpayer's dime. That's why Lynetta was passing around. So if you haven't put your name and your mailing address, you don't need to write your mother's maiden name or social security or anything. But we wanted your mailing address because we're going to send you this book. But I know, right? A parting gift. But for me, it's not just reading, but what George said is interacting with people. And you always have an opportunity to learn. And you can learn from the mail clerk, you can learn from the cleaning lady, you can learn from the parking attendant. So the message doesn't always come from somebody with a title. And I'm not telling you not to aspire to have that title, but there's lessons to be learned from our parents, from kids, from people that are younger, from people that are older. Every day that you wake up, be very aware of your surroundings and the people. Don't ever dismiss anybody because of what they look like, what level of pay, and where they're at the organization. Some of the greatest things that I have learned from individuals that I just took the time to just engage them in conversation. But Maxwell and Covey, in regards to organization, those are really two authors that I recommend. So Covey and Maxwell, you'll be getting a copy of Maxwell as well.
I think for me, it's just getting involved. I mean, you know, how many times have you ever gone to your local municipality's council meeting? You know, I mean, you know, so again, going back to my example, what's a resolution, what's a proclamation? Getting involved, you know, in your own community, even if it's volunteer board or what have you, you know, go to those meetings. That's a free classroom every day. You know, like I tell people, you wanna come watch the show, it's the third Wednesday every month at 7 o'clock. You know, that's what my council meets. I'm saying the show, but that's a great time. And then all of a sudden, like George said, you start getting noticed. Who's that last person? It's 2 in the morning. What in God's earth is that person sitting all the way back there doing? You know, there's nobody else in the room. That's how you start getting noticed. You know, going to community events, volunteerism. That's, I think, what inspired me to do something. Like when I sat there across the street from my mom's house, I'm like, why is this park like this? You know, I walk up and down the hallway and Jasmine knows, my model's very easy. You see it, I see it, why do we still see it? It's simple. Why does somebody have to call me about a pothole when I'm paying people to ride around in circles to look for potholes? So I get insulted when somebody calls me about a pothole. So that, and I think leveling the playing field with the town council. If you call my mayor right now, it's just, yes, Ralph, I know only 1 of 5. That takes a lot to do, because you're right, George, they think once they're in office, I wanna change, well, it's 1 of 5. You know, you gotta convince the rest to go that left or right. So I think for me, it was more that the involvement and just seeing things out of order.